One of the ones that we don't have to worry about is the Detroit Lions. So much so, and I feel like we have to put this disclaimer out there, my guy, Flannel. And make sure you tell Paulo Frederick we say what up, though, too. But we got to put this disclaimer out there. We know that we are discussing this from a standpoint of first world problems.
Yes.
We know this. If everything stays healthy, knock on wood,
sure.
This is a squad that we've all said, and they're saying, and other pundits out there are saying, has the recipe to go out there and win a Super Bowl. That's exactly what we want to see out of this squad. Stay healthy. And I believe that the depth that they have right now allows them to stay fresher, longer, rotate some guys in at some crucial areas. And you know what? This 53-man roster gives us a more clear look at that.
I mean, I think a perfect example of that, and this is where I think it's going to have universal agreement amongst all Lions fans and amongst Woodward Sports for sure. That running back room, who says no? You got Jahmyr Gibbs, you got David Montgomery, you got Sione Vaki, and you've got Craig Reynolds.
That's cooking.
That's elite.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how you would want it. Are there more questions about other rooms, like maybe the wide receiver room? Sure, but I think Tim Patrick, if he comes back and is healthy, will do a lot to alleviate that. And that's what sort of brings me to one of the points that I want to make today, because I think it played out this way. With the wide receiver room, the fact that you saw Isaiah Williams make the team as an undrafted free agent rookie, which is a hell of an accomplishment, but it looks like he earned it. The fact that you saw Donovan Peoples-Jones and Darius Fountain get cut, even though they are more of the archetype of the type of wide receiver that the Lions really needed. I mean, they signed Tim Patrick. You cannot convince me any longer that preseason is meaningless. You cannot convince me that Isaiah Williams' standout performances in preseason did not have some factor in him being on this team. You cannot convince me that Isaiah Williams' showing of being versatile, with even being at times, and I think in totality, the best kick returner and the best punt returner in the preseason, while also having the surest hands. Shout out Calhoun and Maurice Alexander for that. And being just a guy who always gets open. You can't tell me that didn't play a factor in him making this team. You can't tell me that the fact that quarterbacks had a 1.9 passer rating when targeting Donovan Peoples-Jones in the preseason had no factor in him making this team. You can't tell me that Darius Fountain, being for the most part a non-factor, didn't have a factor in him not making this team. Because I was told, and this isn't taking a shot at the heavyweights, but when they went to training camp, that Darius Fountain was this guy's obviously going to make the team. But you saw in preseason that Isaiah Williams clearly shone above the rest of them, and that's why he's on this team, in my opinion, and I couldn't be happier about it. He certainly earned it.
And Flannel, I want to relive the moment I had when you first walked in here. Well, you beat me here, but when we first met up this morning, I was like, "Hey, man, like, what are the biggest surprises of this of these cuts?" And what'd you tell me? you were like, "It's." I'm not really like pounding the table for anyone that was cut.
No, there's not one, and we're gonna get more into the defensive angle of the 53-man roster in the next segment. But offensively, no, there's. I mean, who's really heartbroken that Donovan Peoples-Jones got cut? And I know we discussed it yesterday, but we all saw him just look awful out there, for a lack of a better term.
If we can see it, they can.
Yes.
And his supporters are, just from a social standpoint and seeing all of the different comments. I know that dude Justin can talk on it too. We're just seeing on those posts about GPJ, people have come to grips into terms like, look, we wanted the story to work, we wanted the angle to work, but it didn't work. And I do believe that that's a sign of us as fans moving in the right direction as it relates to what to do with these Super Bowl expectations.
Yeah, and while they didn't go out and, trade for Brandon Ayuk or trade for Matthew Judon, those moves that really signal like, all right, all in for the Super Bowl, I think a lot of these cuts, while on a smaller scale, do prove that this front office, both Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, are being much more shrewd with their decision-making. When we're talking about cutting guys like Sudfeld, cutting guys like Scott Daly, cutting guys like Shane Zylstra and James Mitchell, and moves that you think, of course, Sudfeld shouldn't have made the roster, but he's a guy that they do love and they trust and they want on the team. But it's to a point now where the 53-man roster, each roster spot is way more important than having, a third stringer take up a roster spot just to hold the clipboard and help Jared Goff throughout the week, which is what I like to talk about Sudfeld as being that guy. I think they might sign him to the practice squad, but nonetheless, their ability to make those decisions and upgrade, even if just a little. This Hogan hat and this new long snapper, we're not going to spend any time on him today, but that's just a small move to move away from Scott Daly for a more versatile long snapper who can play some special teams. Little moves like that give me hope that this front office, they're making the right decisions.
Sure, and I know, and this isn't me taking a shot at you or a Nate Sudfeld. We can talk about his value as Jared Goff's like liaison, and I'm not trying to be a dick. That's like a. I'm just saying.
He is a clipboard specialist.
We can talk about
throwing Sudfeld in the CJ GJ bin.
CJ GJ clears Sudfeld, obviously, but we talk about him as a practice squad guy, as somebody you could bring back, and I don't mind that. He cannot, under any circumstances, take a roster spot, take a 53-man roster spot. What if his spot would have taken the opportunity for them to go after Tim Patrick? What if he got the roster spot that what is now currently occupied by like a Brandon Joseph or a Ben Neiman or somebody like that? It cannot happen. When you are mortified of somebody ever taking a snap on the field, you can't have them on your roster. You just can't. So I was ecstatic that he didn't make the 53
and that's what I meant by the CJ GJ bin. When it was just a throwback to our one of our more epic, kind of battles in here, where we were discussing the impact, the intangibles that he brought. And you were discussing the fact that he wasn't making an impact on the field. He was injured. And that's what I was talking about as it relates to Sudfeld. And I do believe that it shows not just where Darren Campbell is. We've talked about the fact that they're willing to make the hard decisions, the tough decisions, even if that's moving on from one of their friends that they thought could originally do a job at a coaching spot. But it shows that Brad Holmes as well has done a great job. In the past, Nate Sudfeld's probably still on this roster, and some of the cuts are a little more difficult to make. But based on what you're doing in free agency, your drafts over the year absolutely panning out. Now all of a sudden you're to a point where you don't have that ability anymore to say, you know what, we'll just keep a Nate Sudfeld around. Now you have to say, you know what, we got to do what's best for this squad. Especially, we're going to continue to talk about it, depth and versatility.
Sure. Can't have Nate Sudfeld on the 53-man, and I think we all agree with this. Before we move on and go to break or go to anybody else, I just got to read this comment from my favorite person in the world, Shad.
Shad.
And I get where you're coming from, but let me explain. Victory lapping preseason is crazy coming from Sam when he said we can't victory lap training camp. Here's the difference, at least from my opinion. When I was talking about people making the team based on what they did off of a preseason and training camp as well, but also from what you saw in preseason, I'm referring to a rookie undrafted free agent making this team over Donovan Peoples-Jones. I'm not victory lapping. I'm more so explaining how or why I believed it happened. And I think that the preseason performance had something to do with it. There's no way you can tell me that it didn't. I will repeat again, quarterbacks in the preseason when targeting Donovan Peoples-Jones had a 1.9 passer rating. That's impossible, but it happened.
I love how JB Smooth just left the camera on Flannel Sam.
I just let him cook.
Just a little bit longer. Hey, let me see that 3-point celebration. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. I'm not this guy.
Let's go. Let's go, man.
I'm going to hand the ball to the referee guy. Come on. You guys know that, except when it's Jesse Winker. Because I don't have to be consistent with my principles. Come on. We all know that. I treat everyone the same, differently.
It's cool to see, man. Just looking at the 53-man roster on the offense, I believe Broder kind of summed it up right. There's nothing that really jumps off the page. Like, yo, what are they doing? Everything looks like, you know what? This team, this front office, this coaching staff, they're in complete lockstep, and the players that are there are some of the ones that we wanted to see there. I'm so glad to see that Sonny Vaki was more than just a guy we were discussing about as it relates to early potential. Obviously, now he has to still cash in on what Dan Campbell has said. We believe that this is a guy who's more than potential that he's going to be able to produce out there on the field. So when I look at the roster, though there's no surprises, there are definitely some decisions out there that I'm very, very excited about. Hendon Hooker as quarterback, too. Going out there and earning it. You know what? Not because Nate Sudfeld doesn't belong on the field, but because Hendon Hooker went out there and proved to us in his first preseason, his first real action, that he's a guy that, you know what, knock on wood, if Jared Goff goes down, could definitely hold down a series or a game. Sione Vaki being in there. I'm glad that he went out there and did his thing through preseason, especially after he had such a big presence on our draft coverage. Broder, Sam, Anson, JB Smooth, everybody, man, and that's what the team is about. We're always going to try and make sure we shout out those.
Hell yeah.
That we know
Anson was on it early.
Yeah, and so I want to ask you guys, obviously, we're excited that people like Sam Laporta made it, but who are some of the guys that were on the fringe that, on this offense that you're like, you know what, I'm glad they made it. But give me that right after the break, and we'll get into this defense as well.